sterilized without consent during the 1960s and 1970s. Then also this Thursday, you don't want to miss the panel, A Tale of Two Students, at 4:30 p.m. in Love Auditorium. Dinner will also follow the panel. This Friday at 12:30 p.m. in Lacefront 207, there will be a brown bag of relationship violence featuring, I'm not laughing at the announcement, sorry, featuring advocates from victims of violence. Then next Thursday, don't miss the monument at Colgate.
Tuesday.
On Tuesday. Wait, yeah, it says Tuesday. Okay. The film is tomorrow, so that's Wednesday. Wednesday at 7. Okay. So Monument Close at Colgate will be next Tuesday. It's a public healing space for survivors of abuse and assault and their communities. And the Powerful Project will be on display from 2 to 6 p.m. at Whitnall Field, or the Hop if we keep having bad weather. For more info or to volunteer to help set up and clean up, contact Ali Fry. Also, be on the lookout for Queer Fest posters. We can't wait for all the events that are going to happen. It's going to be great. Also, if you need to leave during the presentations or housekeeping, please do so respectfully and quietly. There's trash and compost in the back. Also, if you can help us by putting away chairs at the end of this brown bag, that would be great. Alright, so let's get started. So today we're talking about birth stories with a few staff and faculty members from our community. We have Kerra, Director of Residential Programs, Professor Metzler, Professor Susan Wooley, and Erin Solle, who is actually a husband to Professor Lisa Simmons. She's sick, so she couldn't be here. She's stepping right up. And they're joining us to share stories of recently giving birth. So thank you all for being here, and thank you to being a really great audience today. Awesome. And thanks for sharing your stories with us. We're really honored to have you here to share. So, I'm going to pass it on.
So, Simon is the one who's with me right now, and he's about a year and a half. So I had him October of 2014. And I would say that he's going to try to steal it from me the whole time. Our birth story kind of started with a pregnancy that was, it was a high-risk pregnancy. So I was on bed rest for a couple of weeks, and most of the pregnancy we were actually just trying to keep him in because he wanted to come out really early. So I spent a couple of nights in the hospital where they were keeping me from having contractions as early as 28 weeks, and they gave steroid shots and so on and so forth. So when it actually came time that they were like, okay, you can now have him and he's good to come out, we were like, okay, great. And then like my contractions stopped. They weren't happening anymore, of course. So on one of those days when I had not been having contractions at all, that probably works. So we had a nice calm day and not much had happened, and we were getting ready for bed. My husband's over there, that's Keith. And all of a sudden my water broke. Like I was not having any contractions at all, and we had a doula, and they had prepared us, for, laboring at home and all that kind of stuff. And so we called her and she said, oh, your water broke. Go now. We're like, what? And they're like, go now to the hospital. So I'm not sure if you know, but you can't give birth in Hamilton at the hospital. You have to drive to either Syracuse or Cooperstown or Oneida. So it's about an hour drive, and I don't really remember much of it, other than I wasn't contracting too much at that point, a little bit, and I was texting students to tell them that I was not meeting with them the next day. I know. So it only actually took us about 45 minutes to get there. Thanks, Keith. And we got there, and we spent about an hour in triage where they basically take your vitals and they confirm that yes, you are in labor. Yes, my water did break. All those kind of things. I mean, it was very obvious. And I had gone in hoping to have a natural childbirth, but being open to whatever, because I'd never had a child before, so I wasn't sure what was going to happen. So it was probably about midnight by then, and Kraus was very supportive, and I walked around the halls, and the contractions got more and more intense, and I'm a long-distance runner, and I felt like I had been through pain before, and I never realized what pain was. And, you know, my doula was great, and she was trying to get us into different positions and all that kind of stuff, and they had me in the birthing tub for a little bit, so I was in the water, and that felt great, and then I'm like, I kind of feel like I need a push, and, you know, I don't even know how, it hadn't been that many hours then, and they're like, oh, let's check and see how dilated you are, and I was only 6 centimeters dilated, and you have to be 10 to be able to push. I was like, I can't do this. And they're like, oh, well, let's just give it a little longer. And I'm like, no, I can't do this. Get this child out of me now. And I've gone in and I'm like, I don't want a C-section. That's the only thing I care about. I don't want a C-section. And at that point, I was just like, get him out. So my doula advised getting an epidural. And sitting for the epidural was really hard. I just like the pain because you can't move at all because they're putting a needle into your spine. And by the time they put the epidural in and we're starting to get it flowing, I was like, oh, that feels a little better. And I was like, I still feel like I really need a push. And they're like, okay, we'll check you. They're like, oh, you're now 9.5. So in the like 30 minutes that they took to put the epidural in, I had pretty much progressed the whole way. So they waited another 20 minutes and told me to push, and I pushed for an hour. And then he was there, which was amazing. So it in total was probably about 6 hours of labor, so I didn't really labor all that long. And I had an amazing team. The doctors were great. They were very supportive, and my husband was great, obviously. And they made sure that I was ready to give birth as much as possible, so I had no tearing or anything. And you know, I was out of the bed within like an hour, walking around, and I was walking miles within a week. So I had a very fast recovery, despite having been on bed rest for 3 weeks in the middle of the pregnancy. So I don't know if
Hello, so this is Kyrie, the really talkative little girl. And I'm Kerra. So Kyrie is about to go to 7 months and about 2 weeks. Let's see, so she's born August 7th, 2015. So I have really bad asthma. I'll start with that. I have really bad asthma, and about a month before my due date, I had a bad asthma attack and had to be taken by ambulance to the hospital in Utica. So during that time, they ran some tests and realized that there was not a lot of fluid around the Kyrie here, and so they began talking about inducing labor a month early. So first they said, let's watch you for a little while, see how your asthma progresses, see how Kyrie progresses, and then we make a decision. So there were 2 doctors who couldn't agree on what to do. And so they decided together to wait and see whoever's prediction came out correct, and then whatever call that person made, what we go. So that person had said, let's wait for another month, let's try to push it. But in the meantime, I needed to see a cardiologist to make sure my heart was set, a pulmonologist to make sure my lungs were set, and so we got to go back home for the additional month. So at that point in time, they increased our hospital visits to about, I think, twice a week, to make sure that they were able to monitor me well. So my original due date was August 14th. As I said, Kyrie's born August 7th. So I had an appointment. Yes, it's your mom. So I had an appointment on, I think, August 5th. And the doctor goes, and he goes, oh, you're cooked. There's no reason this baby should stay any longer. Come back tomorrow. So mind you, at this time, the nursery hadn't been done. My partner's in athletics. He's the assistant athletic director for facilities and event management. So running around a lot. Jamie Mitchell, if you've ever seen him. So he's a planner. And at this time, the nursery was not done, or bag was not packed, because we weren't planning for a little while longer. Anywho, fast forward to the 6th of August. It was a Friday. I had a 3 p.m. appointment. So we drove up to the hospital, 3 p.m. And he goes, well, we're going to get this baby out because now your blood pressure is high. And the fluid around her is low. So I'm like, okay. Again, first child, didn't know much about anything. Because of my appointment in and out of the hospital before she was born, we hadn't gone for our appointments or childbirth appointments. We had nothing. So going up to childbirth, I watched a lot of YouTube. A lot of YouTube. And so, okay, let's practice breathing. So different things. So YouTube was my friend. So we got to the hospital and they started the induction to the inducing process. And I was just sitting there like, okay, this isn't bad. So they said, let us know when you have contractions. I'm like, what does that feel like? I've never had a child. They said, well, it feels like cramps. I've never had those either. So what does it feel like? Is it really bad gas? I'm like, no, I haven't had that. So I had nothing to gauge what a contraction felt like. And so every time I felt, I'm like, I think I have one. And they're like, no, machine said you had none. The whole time, so it was 3 p.m., 4 p.m., 5 p.m., 6 p.m., so now we're in there. Mind you, before you get in, they tell you not to eat. So I think it's like 2 hours before, so 2 hours before 3 p.m., not to eat. You can't have water after a certain point, so I haven't had something to drink. And again, my partner is not a YouTube person. So at around 1 a.m., I started feeling what I'm guessing were contractions because it hurt really bad. And so I called the nurse and I said, whatever medicine you want, you have, I want it, like right now. So she said, no, we have to wait a little while longer before we give you medicine. She, you could tell, was the kind of person who really wanted you to try your best now. And that was not what I had in mind. So that was 1 a.m. I started having really bad contractions. 2 a.m. came, still hurting, 3 a.m. And each time she kept on saying, I have to wait, you have to wait for the doctor, wait for the doctor. Eventually she gave in and gave me a painkiller of some sort. But with my asthma, I'm a little bit paranoid about breathing, and so I started fighting the painkillers. So my body was falling asleep, but my mind was still awake. So I fought it right through and stayed completely awake until about 12 in the afternoon, when I think the pain got so much. Now, sidebar, Jimmy, again, has watched a lot of television. And again, we didn't go to birthing classes. So he tried his technique that he saw on TV, which clearly wasn't correct. So around 12 o'clock, I got up and walked with the IV still connected and ripped the IV off my arm. And I don't know. And that set off a number of alarms. And so more senior nurses came in and were like, what's wrong? Are you okay? I'm like, I heard it. Give me drugs. No. It's okay. So they gave me the epidural at around 1 p.m. At that point, I'd only dilated about, I think they said 1 centimeter dilated. Again, you have to be 10. So 1 centimeter dilated after all those hours. And by this point, the epidural wasn't working. So everything was numb, but I was still feeling the pain. So I think one of the nurses and doctors came back in, and I said, I clearly need more drugs. And so they gave me more medicine, and then my entire lower body fell asleep. So now everything up top is awake. I'm conscious, but everything down here is asleep. You have to move my legs to get me anywhere. And that continued till around 7 p.m. The doctor came back and checked. And after all these hours, I was still dilated no more than 3 centimeters. So at this point, with the low fluid, the concern about my asthma, they're not sure about heart situation. He goes, well, we need to consider a C-section. And I'm like, well, whatever you need to do. I wasn't particularly committed to a vaginal birth or a C-section. I was like, whatever gets her safe is fine. So 8 p.m. comes, he comes back and checks, still 3 centimeters. 9 p.m., still 3 centimeters. 10 p.m., still 3 centimeters. So at that point, they said, you know, since we already broke your water, we need to get the baby out. How do you feel about a C-section in the next hour? And I said, I guess that's fine. Sure. So that's when my mother was in the hospital. My mother and my partner tried to figure out who wanted wanted to give up the delivery room more. Jamie won. And so, you know, they put us in a gown, strapped us up, and brought us into the operating room. Now, because the lower section of my body is asleep, and I'm conscious, the expectation is I can see and feel and not feel down here, but everything up here. So I was so sleepy by this point that as they said, all right, we're gonna get started, I remember saying to Jamie, just hit my hand, just like I want to feel it, like hit my hand. I hit my hand, I felt it, and I fell asleep. So I woke up, and I was like, hey, are you gonna get started? They're like, we're just about done here, ma'am. Oh, okay, and then I heard him go, oh, poor head, look at all that hair, because she'd been pushing so long. There's a little comb on the side of her head. So he goes, her poor head, look at that hair. I heard her cry, and I was like, oh, cute. I went back to sleep. So, my partner did his thing off to the side. He got a lot of time with her because I was completely knocked out. And then I woke up again and asked again, how long, like, this is the long part, right? How long does this take? He's like, we're just about finished sewing you up. We should be good to go. And they wheeled me out. I saw her once more, and I fell back asleep. So I think it's just being so tired. I slept through the entire thing. My partner says he could see them like pulling and tugging so my body would move as I'm sleeping. I didn't feel any of it. But yeah, and fast forward 7 months later, here is one miscarriage. So yeah, the pain was ridiculous. Nothing that you could imagine. But the funny thing is, I don't remember what it felt like. I actually don't remember how much it hurt. Initially, I was saying that the doctor was trying to convince us never to have more children with this pain. I don't remember it. I don't. I just remember this wonderful thing.
My children are somewhere around here. Bring them back. So I have twins. My little boy, where's my little boy? Professor Stern went on a walk with Wilder. Oh, there he is. There's Wilder, that's my little boy, and my little girl is there's Beatrix. And then my wife, Tiffany, is holding B right now. So they will be 1 year next week. They're almost a year old. I actually wrote notes because I'm still functioning on 3 hours of sleep, and which means I'm not really functioning on that. So I was trying to think of how to start this in terms of where do I begin? And then I thought this was in the panel about conception. Although when you are a queer person and you're pregnant, people always ask, how did that happen? And I assume that people don't ask straight people how that happened. So we got real good at fielding that question. I'm not going to talk about that right now, but I'm happy to if anybody really wants to know. But yeah, so they were conceived through artificial insemination. And I thought this isn't a panel about pregnancy. I could tell you all about a multiple pregnancy and how complicated that was and difficult, but it's also not a panel about pregnancy. But I had a really challenging pregnancy because I had 2. And so when you have more than one, the likelihood of complications just rises, and babies, multiples, so twins, triplets, etc., are typically born premature.
So with that comes a whole bunch of complications. The lungs might not be developed, they might not be able to breathe on their own, they might not have enough body fat to regulate their temperature, and so forth. So our goal from the very beginning was we need to fatten these babies up, and we need them to stay in there as long as possible. So for some of the logic that you have with the singleton pregnancy is like, don't gain too much weight too quickly. And from the get-go, it was like, just put on the pounds, you know, and rest as much as possible. So I was sleeping a lot and trying to eat all the time. I had a 3,500 calorie diet just to grow 2 babies, and I was still hungry. But actually, eating 3,500 calories a day is really difficult. And healthy calories. I couldn't eat like pizza and ice cream. I mean, I couldn't eat pizza. So anyways, so for my birth, you know, my goal the entire time was just healthy and safe babies, and so I really wasn't that attached to the method. I wanted them to stay in there as long as possible and come out as safely as possible. 50% of twins are born via C-section, so your likelihood of having a C-section goes up the more babies you have inside of you. I wanted to try for a vaginal birth, and we had a doula who was helping us prepare for that. And then in the last 2 months, it was pretty obvious my little boy was breech. Beatrix was, so they call Beatrix baby A because she was closest to my cervix, and Wilder was baby B because he was the farther away from the cervix. And she took up 80% of the womb, and he was squished in the corner. So another thing that doctors are really concerned about with twins is they want to make sure that they're both growing at the same rate and they're both growing well. Because typically what can happen is if they're sharing a placenta, one of them can steal all the nutrients and starve out the other one. So they're constantly monitoring that, and they were growing neck and neck the entire time. They still are neck and neck. So at the very end, it was just obvious we weren't able to. He wasn't rotating, and there wasn't enough space inside of me for anybody to really move. With twin pregnancies, you grow a lot bigger. So when I was 26 weeks pregnant, I was the size of somebody who has 1 baby at 37 weeks. When I was 30 weeks pregnant, I was the size of somebody who has 1 baby at 40 weeks at full term. So, like, I think I had you as a professor, you can remember I was gigantic. I was gigantic for a long time. I mean, people, when I was like 22 weeks pregnant, people were like, oh, any day now. And I was like, I got a month. So thanks for commenting on my body. Public body. So when it became really clear that we weren't going to be able to rotate him, we switched gears into thinking about a planned C-section. And my goal was to have them safe, but then also I didn't want to have a vaginal birth for one, and then a C-section for the other one, and have to heal from both of those. So it was like just one method, whichever one you think. And his head was a little bit bigger, and so they were concerned that like I could vaginally deliver Beatrix, but then my cervix might close up and close on his head and basically strangle him. And then they'd be in an emergency C-section situation, and I just, if we can avoid emergency anything, like, let's just do that. So we did a planned C-section, and really quickly, our doula helped us think about what a family-friendly C-section is and what a gentle C-section is. So there were details that we wrote a birth plan. My doctor was very accommodating, and there were things that we took into account, like they put my IV in my non-dominant hand, so as soon as Beatrix was born, I was able to hold her and put her on skin to skin. As soon as Wilder was born, Tiff was able to put him on skin to skin. And things like we had a team. Basically, we had 2 medical students who were following us for a year for my prenatal visits, and then up and through this year, just to learn about this. And they were in the room. Tiff was able to be in the room. Our doula was in the room. And they would do things like drop the curtain and show me whenever one of the babies would come out. So I was awake the whole time. I remember all of it, and I remember the pulling. I mean, they literally cut you open and they pull, and you don't feel any pain, but you feel like everyone, like you're just being pulled around and tugged, and your organs are on the table. Yeah, but I mean, in some ways, we had sort of the best possible situation in that our cesarean was planned, so we were able to think about it ahead of time and kind of mentally prepare ourselves. But then also, really quickly, I started rejecting sort of the dominant discourse. There's a lot of discourse about natural childbirth, by which people mean vaginal birth, or they mean unmedicated birth. So I started correcting people, and like they would say, "Are you going to have them naturally?" I would say, "Do you mean vaginally, or do you mean unmedicated?" And I also started rephrasing, instead of calling it a C-section, a cesarean birth. Just to kind of, I refused. I had a number of friends who were really disappointed by their C-section, and I refused to be disappointed in that. I was like, I'm going to give birth to these babies in whatever way is the most safe for everyone, and yeah, I chose to just kind of own the narrative in that way. And then now, a year later, I'm still sleep deprived, and we have 2 wonderful babies. Tiff, do you want to add anything?
No. You did great.
Hello, I'm Aaron. I'm married to Professor Alicia Simmons, who is sick at home in bed. It happens. So we have 2 kids, actually. We have Talia, who is 2 days younger than Simon. They're in the same classroom down at the daycare, CNS. They're best friends. It's really cute. They hug each other. It's adorable. Yeah, it really is very cute. When I dropped her off today, Simon was already there, and I said, "Bye, Talia," who is actually 74 weeks old. I keep track. And if we pull up the Facebook, I would show you pictures, because I take pictures every week. So I said, "Bye, Talia," mwah. And she didn't kiss me back, but Simon did. It was very cute. And then I have a almost 6-year-old named Lorelai. And so the interesting thing is that Professor Alicia Simmons is African American, and Lorelai looks exactly like her. Talia looks exactly like me. We knew that was possible. It's kind of funny. They actually look very much alike, except for the skin tone. Whatever. They're both great kids. So I want to talk about Talia first, just because she's the same age as she's a baby. So when we had Talia in October, and we didn't do any planning. There was no birth plan. There was nothing. We were just going to go do this. We had done so much more for Lorelai than we did for Talia. That's because we'd already been through it. So Alicia knew that she was going into labor that night. We had arranged with Professor Susan Thompson to come down and watch Lorelai, because somebody had to watch Lorelai while we went to the hospital. We had told Lorelai that she would wait, that there would be some day, we didn't know when, but there would be some day that she'd wake up and somebody else would be there. It wouldn't be us. So we call Susan Thompson at 7 o'clock, and we say, on the 21st of October, and we say, "Hey, it's happening. Be prepared for a late night call." We call Susan at 3 in the morning. She does not pick up. She is asleep. I do not blame her. At this time, I was working for Peace and Conflict Studies, and Professor Nancy Reese stays up till 2 a.m. almost every day. So I called her, and she came down at 4 in the morning. She told me she'd just fallen asleep, but she came down, and we drove out 3 in the morning. Again, it's an hour and 15-minute drive. We made it in about 45 minutes. There's no traffic. It's not like there's any traffic anyway. There's no traffic at 20. So we were there, and it's a very similar story to what Rebecca was saying. It's, you go there, it's dilation, not there yet, you wait. So everything started at 6 a.m. Talia was born at 12:30. 6 hours. She's totally healthy, totally great. She does sleep through the night. It does happen. On the flip side of that, for Lorelai, who was born in 2010, this was our first time. We were living in Boston. We were like, birth plan, no drugs. We're going to do this. She was born at 42 weeks. She stayed in the womb the extra 2 weeks. Alicia was miserable. So at 42 weeks, they say, your baby's not being there any longer. 42 weeks is the max. So we went to the hospital, Brigham and Women's in Boston, and they gave Alicia a drug, and then told her to come back later. We went on a Saturday at 11. They gave her a drug. We returned to the hospital Saturday night at 8 p.m. Lorelai was not born until 5:40 p.m. the next day. So Alicia was in labor for 24 to 36 hours, depending on how you do the math. She was, again, miserable. So we go there, at 8 p.m. on Saturday. At 11 p.m. is when she was like, all right, give me the drugs. We were there with her mom, and so there's only one bed. There's only one extra bed. Of course, the pregnant lady gets a bed of her own. There's one extra bed. I gave the bed to Alicia's mom. I slept on the floor. There's nothing more uncomfortable than a hospital floor. I wasn't giving birth. Yeah. Very much my perspective. And what they say when you see the movies when the pregnant woman is holding the person's hand and the guy's like, ah, totally true. I don't know where that strength comes from, but man, I heard Dale Marks. Okay, anyway, so Alicia for Lorelai was in labor for a very long time, and then she gave birth, and it was amazing. I say again, this is a guy's perspective of this, is that she gave birth and Lorelai instantly breastfed. And I say, I'd much rather, guy's perspective here, I'd much rather have a long birth and have breastfeeding work than the other way around, because if breastfeeding doesn't work, that's like trauma. That's I'm not going to say it's worse. I'm not going to say it's worse. But it's definitely convenient when the baby breastfeeds. So that was good. So, I mean, I don't know what to say that hasn't been said. I can't talk about any of the experience of pushing out a baby for obvious reasons. But, we had definitely planned more for Lorelai, and the birth plan just went out the window really quick. And it happens. You plan these things, and things, happen. Sometimes you get to see something. Now for us, for Lorelai, there was a moment where the readings, the charge just like dropped, and a whole bunch of specialists ran in and said, all right, we're going to do a C-section right now. Oh wait, no, everything's fine. And so that was an interesting 5 minutes. But everything worked out, and they're both super wonderful, because I didn't bring them. We weren't planning for Alicia to be sick. I didn't even know that we were supposed to bring the baby. Alicia wrote Mika this morning and said, well, I can't make it, but Aaron will do my part. And I was like, thanks. So I didn't know I was supposed to bring Solle. But, and yeah, they're both great kids, and everything worked out. I don't really have anything to add that hasn't been said. And, yeah. Sorry.
So if you have questions, I know it's close to being time to leave, but if anyone has questions, you're open for questions.
Obviously not for you, but for you guys, like, when you were like in college and stuff, did you like always know you wanted to have kids or like give birth? Like, because I really don't want to have kids ever, but my kids does, and we talk about
That's a good question. I was really intrigued by pregnancy for a long time, like up until about 5 years ago, and I knew that I wanted to be pregnant because I wanted to go through that experience, but the baby kind of felt like a deal breaker. I was like, I don't know if I'm really ready for a baby after I like young children. I like playing with them. I want someone who can talk to me. So I've never been one who like gets really excited about babies. But it wasn't until like my early and mid 30s that I actually started wanting to have a family. And then in more recent years, there kind of came a point where I was like, I either choose my career or I choose to have a family, or I try to make both happen. And I came to a question of what would I regret? Like if I went up for tenure and I didn't have a family, would I regret that? Or if I went and had a family but I didn't get tenure, would I regret that? And I decided that I wouldn't regret having children, and chose that. But it took a while to get there.
I knew I wanted kids, and I had the plan to have children and to adopt somewhere down the line. The pregnancy part for me was just like, okay, but I always had a fear of childbirth. Like, it's dangerous. I've always had a fear, like, the process of pushing a child out or getting cut. I've never had surgery. Like, that was terrifying to me. But once the baby was in there, it had to come out somehow, and nobody had found the third option of getting the child out. So I figured we just go with it. So yeah, I knew I wanted kids. I was just afraid of the process of getting the child out.
So in college, I was not thinking about I'll be honest. I went back and forth about wanting to have kids. I wasn't really sure, and I mean, we weren't sure. We talked about it for a fair amount before we decided that we did. And it took us a little while to get pregnant also, so that made it that we really could talk about it a lot. But, I mean, eventually it was like, yeah, this is what we want. He really wants a microphone. And so, I guess the answer is no, I do not know at one point in time whether.
Actually, can you answer this too?
Sure.
Yeah, the guy's perspective.
Well, so I mean, I dated other people before I married Alicia, and I didn't want kids with them. I'll be honest. We talked about it, and it was just like, no. But Alicia and I, when Alicia and I met, it was like really quick, like, you know, talking about what do we want in life, and family was one of those things that we agreed that we wanted. We had Lorelai when Alicia was finishing her PhD. So she submitted her dissertation and had Lorelai a month later. So, I mean, and really, looking back, we probably could have done this a year earlier. Now, again, guys' perspective, who knows what she would say in this situation. But I think we probably could have pulled this off a year earlier, because she was finishing her PhD and just working on that dissertation. She wasn't going to school, she wasn't, you know, teaching classes, she was just working on the dissertation. So, it was, for Alicia and I, it was very much like we're having kids. She did it while she was still in school. But it really was the right person. It was not like I wanted kids with anybody. And I think that's the way it should be. You know, and for us, it was both kids were very planned. Like, Lorelai, we wanted to have a kid in the spring because we didn't want to drive in the snow. So she was born in May. And then Colgate, actually, the way pregnancy leave works for faculty members, it's if you teach a certain amount into the semester, you kind of have to keep teaching. Yeah, and so for us it was very much like we have to have this kid in this little window, which we pulled off. So we gave family planning.
Actually, can I just add something? Because I had a lot of people ask me, like, how did you decide, like, who's going to carry? And I was like, I really wasn't jonesing for it. I was like, me first. And it was really was like me first. So it was great. I actually didn't really have to, even that wasn't an issue. And then we had two, and I was really done. Like, we were, like, I'm kind of cool. I don't have to do this. And I also don't feel like I'm going to miss out. I feel like I have children, and these are my children. We do have to do with, like, legal things to make them our children, which is annoying. But that was something like my mother asked, like, well, why don't you want to do this? And I'm like, I just don't need, I'm not feeling it. And then, of course, to watch her go through a pregnancy with twins, I mean, she was amazing. It was really hard. And I felt like I did a lot of work to feed all of them. But, you know, it was kind of nice, like, we had a choice, you know, and we could have made other choices as well. But, you know, yeah, 2 for 1, and I got a pass.
I don't know if this is like too personal a question or not, but is there a reason why you would attach like the natural birth?
Like the unmedicated?
Yeah. Sorry.
No, it's not. It is a good. It's a really good question, and I don't think I have a great answer for it. A part of it is I really wanted to like feel all of it. I know, weird. But like I said, I'm a long distance runner. I'm really crazy anyway. I just wanted to know what it felt like. And there is a lot of social pressure. I mean, there's a lot of social pressure with birthing, with pregnancy, with after the baby comes, breastfeeding, all that kind of stuff. And so I'm sure a part of it was social pressure. But yeah, I really wanted to feel I mean, I'd gone through the pregnancy. I wanted to feel like what was the birth like? Obviously, I felt like I'd felt it all. And I have no regrets about taking the epidural. Like, I'm totally happy with my birthing experience. And I agree with Susan. Like, I went into it deciding whatever happens, I'm going to just own this is mine, and I'm not going to regret anything as long as I have a healthy kid. I was wondering if you could talk about your postpartum experiences, because that's something that people don't really hear about.
Yeah, I can start. Sure. So, like I said, I feel like I was blessed with a very easy postpartum because I had no tearing at all, and so I didn't have to have stitches, which, as you can imagine, that prolongs the recovery experience. I also had not gained a lot of weight. I actually had trouble gaining weight. And that is a whole other thing I can talk about when you have to drink like Ensure and stuff to try to gain weight during the pregnancy. So I didn't have a lot of extra weight that I was carrying around, and I just bounced back really quickly. And there were other complications afterwards that you also never really hear about. So my son was intolerant to dairy and soy. And I was breastfeeding, and what that means is that I also did not get to eat dairy or soy, and I'm a vegetarian. So you can imagine what that does to your diet. It pretty much like eliminates everything. So we learned how to make all of our, like everything. We couldn't, buy bread at the store because it had whey protein quite often, and so that was something that I was not expecting. But my physical recovery was very quick. There is also the sleep issue, but that lasts a long time.
I think there is a pressure when you are a working mother to get back as quickly as you can, make sure everything is running the way it should run. As I mentioned, from the residential program to Res Life. And I went into birth a week before opening. So my staff didn't catch me. I had 2 new staff members coming in. So I felt a pressure to get back as quickly as possible. And, despite the pain of the stitches, I was just like, I can do this. I can walk, I can run, I can do everything no matter what anybody says. I went to a wedding 2 weeks after giving birth, and I was at the dance floor. And a lot of the folks there were doctors who were just like, well, you can sit down now. So there's that part of it. Definitely, my family lives further away, so the stress of that. My partner, he's grumpy when he doesn't get sleep, and he stayed up through and through. If I woke up in the night, he woke up in the night. So there was that stress of, lots of sleep, thinking about work, trying to push yourself. But I had somebody who was supportive, and was able to say, all right, so I'll take the baby, please go take a nap. Weight-wise, I still have it. One day, whatever, I don't know. But no, I think whenever, when both talk about postpartum depression, but you always have a moment like, am I, is this normal step? Is this right, But I think my motivation, regardless of what, whatever, is always looking at my child's face and going, like, you're mine. You are 100% mine.
There's one I don't know if you had the same experience with the C-section. When oh no, that's not either. When you labor, you sweat and get rid of a lot of fluids, but when you have a C-section, you don't have that opportunity to sweat it out. So the 2 months after they were born, it was like a massive fluid dump. I was sweating. I had night sweats all the time. I would sweat. I would wake up in the middle of the night having soaked. And then, there's the healing. So healing of maybe just say the oral. I know, right? My biggest task when I got home was trying to figure out how to breastfeed 2 babies at the same time. I didn't know how to breastfeed, and didn't even know how one would go about breastfeeding twins. So we hired 2 postpartum doulas to come and help. Also, our families are in San Francisco and Colorado, so very far away. So we needed as much help as possible, especially with 2 babies. And but the healing of the incision, it took about 8 weeks. So I would say 8 weeks where you're not allowed to lift anything except for your babies, and no weight beyond that. Trouble getting up and down stairs, trouble. He would kick my incision while nursing, which hurt.
Well, I can't even talk about my own postpartum. I will talk about that. You know, it's not not only the women who gained the weight, by the way. I was a thinner man at one time. So for Talia, we had already, you know, we knew what we were getting into. Hey, buddy. We knew what we were getting into, and you know, thankfully Alicia didn't. I don't think Alicia suffered from postpartum. If she did, she didn't tell me. And there was division of labor where Alicia took care of Talia, and I take care of Lorelai. Talia is very attached to Alicia for biological reasons. So we split those duties up. Now the funny thing about our family is that I'm going to say like our gender roles are very much reversed. Alicia makes way more money than me. I do all the cooking and the cleaning of the house. So that made things easier. Being here, the Colgate community, the Hamilton community was very good to us. A lot of staff, faculty, our friends stepped up their game. They provided us food, which is funny because I'm the one who cooks. And they just assume that since the wife, woman, you know, is laid out for however much time, that people need to provide food. And I'm like, yeah, thanks for the free food. I can still make dinner. And then, you know, for Susan and Tiff, like, you didn't mention this, but the community came together and gave them a ton of clothes. If you should see the photos of the clothes that were provided to them.
We have 13 boxes about this big in the basement of clothing until they're 6 years old. And shoes.
And so,
hundreds and hundreds of dollars.
And so when you have a community like that to step up.
Love is Talia and Lorelai.
And a lot of it is. Really, I mean, there's a lot of clothes. But I mean, when you have a community, a support team like that to kind of help you out, it is priceless. So that was something I just wanted to comment on, just how friends. Well, my family's also out in California. I'm from California. Alicia's family's from Rhode Island, so they weren't coming up here either. That's only 5 hours away. So it's nice that the community and our friends kind of pulled together and helped us out in that way. That made things easier. Alicia was on leave. She was on maternity leave. I took 2 weeks off, and this was in the middle of the busy season for us. So I was carrying Talia, a little, you know, couple weeks old Talia, in one hand with my phone in the other, answering emails, just walking around in circles. And for Lorelai, again, Alicia was a grad student, so she, you know, didn't have to go to work. But I was working at MIT at the time. I took 4 days off and then asked for a 5th, and they said no. So I was back to work after 5 days. It is what it is. That's, you know, no paternity leave. But you know, that's what happens. And you know, Alicia stayed home with Lorelai. My dad. I'm just going to tell the story because it's funny. My dad said he would come out. My dad lives in Mexico. He's an ex-hippie who just retired down to Mexico. And he said, and we asked him, he's like, I give you money. And I was like, I don't want your money. I want your time. He came out. He told us he'd stay until May through the academic year. He left after 2 months. And it was nice to have that support during that time. My wife will never forgive him for that. So Lorelai was in daycare after 2 months. And Talia was in daycare 3 months? Yeah, you did the same thing. So born in October, daycare by January. And that's just the reality of a working, you know, both partners working, that they have to go to daycare. But thankfully there was no, I don't think there was any depression. That's the best I can say.
I have a question. So, and this is a personal question, but we'll talk about things that were ejected from your body. So, but I know in my personal family, I want to have kids. I don't want it from my own body, and I'm hoping to be in a similar situation as your brother. And kind of, I hope I get with someone who's really about it, because but I think part of it too is, did you ever have a concern about maybe family histories or the experience of pregnancy and birth in your family situations? Kind of as a context for your own birth, because I feel especially if it was your first kid or kids, then it might have been Because that's, for me, that's a concern.
I'll start off. I'm the youngest of my family. I'm the youngest of all my cousins. I was the baby of the family. So I was one of the last ones to have kids. Well, not me, but you know what I mean. So we weren't worried about it. Alicia is the oldest in her family. She has a cousin who's older who had a kid before us, and everything was fine. So no, we didn't worry about that. And thankfully everything was fine. Everything worked out well for us. Which you never really had.
I didn't have a lot of concerns, although my brother's 9 years older than me, so it took my mom and dad 9 years to conceive me. So I was concerned about infertility and how long it would take to conceive. We started trying to get pregnant in 2011 in California, and did get pregnant there, and I had a miscarriage. So when we moved here, I was ready to shift gears to a much more medicalized approach. So we worked with a fertility specialist, and I was concerned about having another miscarriage again. So that was probably my biggest concern. And then other than that, my mother wasn't able to breastfeed, and I really wanted to breastfeed. So I was concerned about learning how to do that without her as a role model.
I'm the eldest of 3, and my mother had severe preeclampsia with my younger brother, so 3 years younger than me. And so that was on my mind for sure. At the same time, one of my aunts was also pregnant, and she had a miscarriage. So, you know, it's a feeling that you can't even describe, you know, knowing that you're both, you know, starting off, and, you know, so, my partner isn't in contact with his dad, so there's always a question of, you know, what kind of family history is coming from that side. So thoughts here and there, but outside of that, it was just do what the doctors say, and we had a timeline to say if I wasn't getting my PhD, then I started family. So, you know, if I one or the other needs to happen within this period. And, you know, when we got pregnant, we're just like, okay, well, here's what's happening now. So, yeah.
So I'm one of 5 kids, and 4 of my siblings had children before I did. One has 4, and then I had a sister who had one just months before me, and a sister who had one months after me. And so I knew a lot about my side of the family. My husband, he also does not know his father, so we were a little concerned about some genetic issues, but you know, we decided we would take that gamble and try to get pregnant. Like I said, it took us a long time to get pregnant, and I think that, you know, there's a lot of taboos that are associated with you know, pregnancy and infertility, and that was really hard going through that and thinking, oh, this might not happen. But we did get pregnant. I actually credit it to taking a sabbatical and going to Israel for a month and, you know, relaxing and stuff. And so once we were pregnant, we didn't have worries at first. We didn't really have worries. But then quickly, like I said, things changed at our anatomy scan, and they at first thought part of his heart wasn't developed, and then they thought that my cervix was already going to be opening, and so they had me on bed rest, and then we had contractions. We were worried about lungs, but you kind of, at that point, you're in, and you just listen to the doctors and hope they know what they're doing. And I mean, as a science person, I was doing all kinds of research, trying to figure out exactly what I could be doing to like up our chances of having a healthy child. I don't think that helped me. But yeah, does that answer?
Yeah.
Anyone else for any questions?
Did you feel like Colgate had a good like maternity or paternity leave practice for you, or do you feel like there could be improvement?
I guess I'll answer first. So when I was interviewing here, that was one of the things I asked about, and so for faculty, if you give birth in the semester during break time period, as Aaron said, you don't teach that semester and you get 2 classes off of teaching out of the 5 that you teach. So for me, I took the fall semester off and then I had to come back and in theory teach 3 classes. That felt really hard, trying to teach that many credits while sleeping 3 hours a night or less, and getting used to being a new mom. But I know colleagues that have no maternity leave at colleges, and so it felt like, oh, that's nice. And officially, my maternity leave was only 6 weeks, officially. I was supposed to be doing meetings and everything else the rest of the time. So it felt like that was generous, but I think there are a number of places where there are some issues, including, if you give birth in the summer, then you don't get any credits off for teaching, and so you have to give up doing research and stuff like that. Paternity leave, you can take family leave, as Aaron was saying, which is what my husband did also. But he took it as vacation time. So the year after Simon was born, we had no vacation time for my husband.
So I'm the dean of the College of UC, and as I'm a partner in athletics. Because it was a cesarean birth, it's I think 8 weeks. So other than me itching to get back to work because of the time of year, I was going to take my 8 weeks. The challenge came up when we had to find childcare. So we weren't able to find anything close, and so when my leave was up, she started coming to work with me. So the good thing about, being in Red's life, we're kind of off in a corner somewhere. And there was a nice little nook in my office that I could take her, and she was much quieter then. And she would just stay there. People wouldn't even know she's in the office. And my CLs, shout out to the CLs, were always willing. I'm EMT, I'm licensed, I'm this, I'm that. I can take care of this child. So the CL would fight overtime to watch her. And so did my assistant directors. They're still fighting overtime to watch her. And on the days that I had really busy meetings, athletics administration was also very, very helpful, where my partner could take her down to athletics, and any one of the folks down there would be like, today's my Kyrie time. So for about an additional month, she spent the day in either Res Life or in athletics until we were able to find childcare.
I just want to skip, I'll go last.
Well, like I said before, there is no paternity leave. And you're lucky if you get paternity leave. The fact that Colgate offers maternity leave is nice. There are a lot of places that don't offer anything. For Talia, I used 2 weeks. I took 2 weeks off, vacation time. I don't really take a whole lot of vacation time, so using vacation time wasn't a big deal to me. And like I was saying earlier, if you somehow plan this correctly, as a faculty member, then you can take that whole term off, but you still are supposed to go to meetings and things. So before Alicia went on maternity leave, she actually did 2 panel discussions here at Colgate. One was where she met with the sheriff of Madison County in, I guess it was late September of 2014, and that was interesting. And then right after that, she did a panel for, I think, Lampert, about the Ferguson shootings at that time. So she did both of those and then went into labor, like a week later. So she was going to meetings, doing panel discussions a week before giving birth. But then she was on leave for the whole fall 2014 term after that, October, December, and then came back and taught 3 and was the same way. Just coming back and having to teach 3 classes was really hard when you're operating on 3 hours of sleep. But the fact that she got maternity during the fall term is really nice. I wish I was so lucky, but I also didn't push a baby out, so fair is fair.
I was treated exceptionally well, and I hesitate to tell people my story because I feel it's almost unfair, but it really shouldn't feel unfair. It's just our system's messed up. So it was a combination of having a dean in the office who was sympathetic and the fact that I was having twins. Also, I work systems really well, and I'm in a department that's very family friendly and supportive, educational studies. So when I went in and talked to the deans, they were like, "You're having twins. You know, you have to worry about preterm labor. You should take off the entire semester." Babies were due in March. They were like, "You should take off the entire semester." And I thought, sit around my last trimester waiting to go into labor in the middle of winter? No. And I was like, I want to teach. And they were like, "You're kind of crazy." And I was like, "Yeah, I want to teach, and that'll." We can hire adjuncts to take over your classes, but there was a formula where I had to teach 8 weeks of the semester in order to then go on bed rest for 3 weeks, which my doctor was going to prescribe for the last 3 weeks, have the babies, and then get put on 8 weeks of disability for a C-section. So if I could make it to teaching through 8 weeks of the semester, I would only use up 9 weeks of my leave time in the remainder of the semester, leaving me 3 weeks of these for the following semester. And that 3 weeks of leave for the following fall semester meant that I only had to go to meetings and do stuff in my department and advise my students that I didn't have to teach. So effectively, I stopped teaching the first week of March, and I didn't come back to teaching until January. So I got 10 months off, which was incredible, and really well. I mean, we really needed it. We needed the income. We also needed me to be home because we had 2 babies, and I was like, I don't know how we're gonna actually manage 2 babies. But my case was definitely unusual, and it was definitely a matter of working with a dean who wanted to make that happen for me. So I was really, really lucky.